All right, ready to dive into a separate piece.
Yeah, let's do it.
This deep dive takes us to the very first chapter of John Knowles' novel,
Okay.
a story set during World War II.
Right.
Even though it's fiction,
Hmm.
the book tackles some big themes.
Yeah.
Memory, fear, change, and the always complicated world of friendships.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you something before we get started.
Okay.
Have you ever gone back to a place from your past and been surprised by how different it felt?
Oh.
Or maybe how much it stayed the same?
Totally.
What kind of emotions did that bring up for you?
A lot, honestly. It's interesting how Knowles begins the story with the narrator heading back to Devon School after being away for 15 years.
Yeah.
The place is just soaked in his memories.
Right.
But when he gets there, he's kind of shocked by how different it looks.
It's like he thought the school would just stay frozen in time.
Yeah.
A monument to his past, right?
Right.
Instead, it's shinier, more straight-laced.
He even says it's like a museum.
He's really wrestling with how much his memories don't match up with what he's seeing.
That clash between memory and the actual reality is a big theme in the story.
And then there's the way he talks about fear.
Hmm.
He describes it as always being there at Devon, even if he didn't realize it at the time.
It's only looking back that he sees how much it controlled things.
He connects those feelings of fear with moments of pure joy, too.
Yeah.
It gives us this peek into how complicated adolescence can be.
That observation about fear is spot on.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how often we're surrounded by things we don't fully grasp until later.
You know, whether it's emotions or pressures or even potential dangers.
What might be in our blind spots right now? That's a good question.
Okay, so there are two spots at Devon that the narrator is drawn to. The grand staircase in the First Academy building.
Right.
And this one particular tree down by the river.
I see where you're going with this.
It's interesting how they seem to represent these opposite sides of the school.
That contrast is definitely intentional on Knowles' part.
Right. On one side, you've got the staircase.
Yeah.
Cold, imposing marble, a symbol of ambition and order.
And then there's the tree.
Yeah.
Wild, untamed, a sense of natural risk.
That tree really gets to him.
Yeah.
Even though it scared him as a kid, he's drawn to it now.
Like he has to confront that fear.
This is where his best friend Finney comes in.
Right.
Finney's the kind of guy who doesn't see anything to be afraid of.
Hmm.
That tree, he sees it as a challenge, something to conquer.
He's determined to be the first to jump from it into the river.
You get the sense that Finney's this force of nature.
Oh, yeah.
Charismatic, athletic, maybe a little mischievous too.
He's magnetic, someone people are drawn to.
Definitely.
He's described as having this maniac look.
And his way of talking is both funny and compelling.
I agree. He's got this unique charisma.
But I wonder if all that outward confidence might be hiding something deeper.
Like what?
Maybe an insecurity? His daring acts, like the jump from the tree.
Maybe they come from a need to prove himself, especially with the war going on.
So you're thinking his fearlessness could be a way of denying the very real dangers of the war.
Yeah, maybe.
The restrictions, too.
Exactly.
So even though the war is happening mostly off stage,
Hmm.
it's still hanging over everything,
Absolutely.
shaping their perceptions.
Yeah.
And maybe even their motivations.
I think that's a key takeaway here.
For our listeners, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
The context of World War II, even if we don't see it directly in this chapter,
Right.
it adds so much depth to the characters and how they relate to each other.
Which makes me think about Finney's comment about the tree jump being his contribution to the war effort.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like just a casual thing to say.
Right.
But maybe it hints at this deeper conflict he's got going on.
You mean between his desire for freedom?
And the pressure to conform to wartime expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, about that tree,
Uh-huh.
it clearly represents more than just a physical challenge for the narrator.
It's like it embodies all his anxieties.
Heights, danger, the fear of failure.
Maybe even his feelings about Finney himself.
We see that play out when they actually climb the tree.
Even though he's terrified, he lets Finney talk him into it?
He knows it's risky,
Yeah.
but he feels compelled to follow Finney's lead.
What do you think about that dynamic between them?
It really shows the complexity of their friendship.
Especially at that age when you're figuring things out,
There's this pull to be accepted by someone you admire.
but also this need to be your own person.
It's something a lot of us can relate to from our own teenage years.
It's like this dance between hero worship
Yeah.
and wanting to break free.
To figure out who you are.
That tension is at the heart of their whole relationship.
It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Definitely.
So the narrator takes the plunge. It's scary, but also exhilarating.
And afterwards, something shifts in their friendship, don't you think?
Yeah, there's this moment of real connection on their walk back from the river.
Finney even says he thinks he's good for the narrator.
Like he's helping him to overcome his fears and inhibitions.
It's like their roles flip for a minute.
The narrator, who's usually more cautious, is the one reminding Finney about curfew.
Right.
Challenging his rebellious side. And Finney actually listens.
That's what makes it so interesting.
They're dynamic.
Yeah.
It's not just one being the leader and the other following.
Their roles are always changing.
As they figure out their friendship.
As the day comes to an end, Knowles gives us this almost melancholic picture of the school.
There's a sense of calm as evening sets in.
But also this feeling that this idyllic summer might not last.
Like we're seeing the calm before the storm.
So much is packed into this first chapter.
It leaves you wanting more.
Definitely makes you wonder what's coming next.
Absolutely. Feels like we're right on the edge of something big.
Yeah, that feeling when you know things are about to change.
So much packed into this first chapter.
It really grabs you.
What were some of the things that stood out to you the most in this opening?
It's amazing how Knowles brings in those universal themes right away.
Yeah.
Memory and nostalgia all mixed up with facing your fears.
Right.
We see how messy friendship can be and that looming feeling of change.
All against the backdrop of war.
It's a lot to process.
But that's what makes it so interesting. And the fact that the narrator's looking back on this time from the future
Right.
as another layer of intrigue.
You know, something big went down at Devon.
Something that still affects him all these years later.
It keeps you guessing what happened between him and Finney.
What secrets are hidden in this seemingly perfect place?
Knowles knows how to build suspense even in the quiet moments.
Speaking of secrets, let's talk more about that tree.
Oh, yeah.
It's obviously more than just a big oak by the river.
Symbolism. Always fun to unpack that.
So what's the deal with this tree?
It works on different levels.
Like what?
On the one hand, it's all about Finney's fearlessness,
Right.
embracing risk and challenge. He sees it as a game, a test, almost like he's rejecting the limits the war puts on him.
But for the narrator, it's all anxiety.
It's everything he's afraid of: heights, danger, failure.
Maybe even Finney himself in a way.
That difference really shows you the heart of the relationship.
How so?
Finney's always trying to get the narrator out of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
Trying to get him to see the world with that same enthusiasm.
But the narrator, while drawn to Finney's energy,
Right.
is more cautious, more thoughtful.
He's both attracted and a little wary of Finney.
It's like they're both trying to figure out who they are
Yeah.
as individuals and as friends.
Exactly. It's that journey we all go through.
Finding your place, who you want to be.
The risks you'll take for the people you care about.
So bringing this back to the bigger picture,
Okay.
what do you think Knowles is trying to say about friendship, especially with this war going on?
I think he's saying that friendships can be both a source of strength and conflict.
Yeah.
They can push us to be better, but also lead us down some tough roads.
And in a crisis like war, those things become even more intense.
Loyalties are tested. Identities are questioned.
The lines between friend and rival can get blurry.
It makes sense when you think about the pressure cooker environment of a boarding school during wartime.
They're trying to create their own separate peace, but the outside world keeps intruding.
That phrase the narrator uses, contentious harmony, to describe the school.
It really sums it up.
Even in a place that seems so ordered, there's tension simmering beneath the surface.
Mirroring what the boys are going through personally as they become teenagers and face the reality of war. You know, one thing that really struck me about Finney is how he can kind of bend reality to what he wants.
Like when?
Like when he says the tree is a cinch to jump from,
Right.
or when he invents the super suicide society of the summer session.
Like he has this power to create his own world.
That's an interesting way to put it.
It says something about the power of belief and how we see things can shape our reality.
Finney's charisma and confidence are so strong that he almost makes you believe him too.
Even when you have doubts.
It's like our perceptions can influence reality just as much as reality itself.
It's like he's defying the limits of the world.
Choosing to see things through a lens of optimism and possibility.
And maybe it's a way for him to deal with the war.
Like a defense mechanism.
Holding on to a sense of control when so much feels out of control.
It makes me think about how the people we surround ourselves with shape our own realities.
Their beliefs, their attitudes, their energy.
Finney's outlook is infectious.
It pulls people in.
We're constantly influencing each other in ways we might not even realize.
Finney's impact on the narrator is huge.
He's a catalyst for growth.
But also a source of tension.
And that push and pull is what drives the story forward. So we've got this captivating setting, complicated characters.
And these big themes all swirling around in just the first chapter.
I'm hooked. As we keep going with this deep dive into a separate piece, what else should we be paying attention to?
Watch for those recurring motifs that Knowles uses.
Like what?
Light and darkness, water and land, innocence and experience.
He uses them to create all these layers of meaning. And don't forget about the language.
Oh, yeah, he's a phenomenal writer.
His descriptions are so vivid.
You feel like you're right there in the scene.
And the way he uses dialogue to show you who the characters are.
It's masterful.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have a question for you and for our listeners.
Shoot.
Why should we care about a story about prep school boys from over 80 years ago?
That's a good question.
What makes this book still relevant today?
I think A Separate Piece has lasted because it taps into these truths about being human.
Like what?
Love and loyalty, fear and jealousy, our need to find meaning in a world that can be pretty messed up.
It's a story about friendship, growing up in that universal search for peace.
Both inside ourselves and in the world around us.
And those themes connect with us no matter when we live.
Exactly. And even though World War II is in the past,
Right.
those themes of conflict, loss, and figuring out who you are.
That was a universal.
Plus, who doesn't love a good coming-of-age story?
Especially with a bit of mystery and suspense thrown in.
A Separate Piece is a great mix of all that.
Yeah.
Beautifully written, thought-provoking, and ultimately heartbreaking.
It stays with you.
As we move into the last part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about.
Great.
Have you ever had a friendship that felt both amazing and a little dangerous? One that challenged you, pushed you to your limits, and maybe even changed you in ways you didn't expect?
Hold on to that thought.
As we finish exploring A Separate Piece.
Back for the last part of our deep dive into the first chapter of A Separate Piece. This conversation has really got me thinking.
Yeah.
How the fact that World War II is going on, even though we don't see it directly, it still affects the characters in these subtle but powerful ways.
It's like this undercurrent running beneath everything they do.
Shaping their choices and how they see the world.
Even if they don't fully realize it.
And I'm really intrigued by how that war context plays out with Finney. Earlier, we were talking about how his daredevil stuff could be seen as a kind of rebellion.
A rejection of all the limits and danger the war represents.
There's this fascinating double-sided aspect to him.
On the one hand, he's all about freedom, being spontaneous, rejecting rules and authority.
But on the other,
there's that awareness that there's a war happening outside Devon.
Yeah.
And as he gets closer to being an adult, he's going to be expected to be a part of it.
So it's like he's stuck between these two forces.
His desire to live in the moment, enjoy being young.
And that pressure to conform, to become a soldier, like the narrator says.
And that tension creates this conflict inside him. We see hints of it in how he admires the seniors.
The ones who are practically soldiers in his eyes.
Right.
He's drawn to their strength and discipline.
Even as he resists those things in himself.
Yeah. It's almost like he's both attracted to and scared of the idea of war at the same time.
He admires the courage and sacrifice.
But he's also afraid of losing his freedom and innocence.
That's a great point.
And it makes me think about his obsession with the tree.
How so?
Maybe those jumps are his way of testing himself.
Proving he has the guts and resilience to be a soldier.
But at the same time, holding on to that freedom and playfulness of youth.
That adds a whole other layer to his character.
He's not just some carefree rebel.
He's trying to figure out who he is, what his duty is, what it means to sacrifice.
All with this war going on.
Which makes his comment about the jump being his contribution to the war effort even more interesting.
On the surface, it's a joke.
But there's something more serious underneath.
Like he's trying to balance his own desires and anxieties.
With the reality of a world that's falling apart.
He wants to believe he's in control of his own life.
But the war threatens to take that away.
It's a reminder that even in this perfect-seeming place like Devon, they can't escape the war.
It's always there, influencing their thoughts, their feelings, how they relate to each other.
And that's what makes A Separate Piece such a powerful story.
It's not just about some boys at boarding school.
It's about what it means to be human.
The things we all struggle with when things are tough and uncertain.
Absolutely. And you know, something else that stands out to me in this chapter
That's that.
is the contrast between how structured the school is and how wild the natural world is, especially the river and the tree.
It's like those two settings represent these opposite forces in their lives.
The school with all its rules and traditions, it's all about order and control. But the river and the tree.
Their freedom, unpredictability, the power of nature.
And it's interesting how the narrator describes the school as having this contentious harmony.
Even in this ordered environment.
There's this underlying tension and conflict.
Mirroring what's going on inside the boys.
It suggests that even the things that seem most stable can be fragile.
That change is going to happen whether you like it or not.
And that sometimes the things we cling to the tightest
are the very things holding us back?
It reminds me that peace, whether it's inside us or out in the world, is hard to find and hold on to.
This delicate balance that can be broken so easily.
And in a way, that's the big question of the whole book.
How do these characters find their own separate peace in a world that's becoming more and more chaotic and unpredictable?
It's a question that resonates with all of us, I think.
No matter what our lives are like.
We all deal with challenges and uncertainty.
We all have times when things feel out of control.
And we're all looking for that sense of balance.
That inner peace that helps us deal with the tough stuff.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into this first chapter of A Separate Peace, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
What does a separate peace mean to you?
That's a good one.
What are the things you hold on to?
The values you cherish.
The relationships that get you through.
And what are you willing to let go of?
To find that balance, that sense of peace, even when everything feels crazy.
That's a great question to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a good one.
Until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions.
And keep diving deep into the stories that help us understand what it means to be human.